Hello, 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 and welcome to the Texarsis Live. My apologies for being late tonight, but it's for a very good reason. We will be talking tonight about targeted individuals because of their Rh negative blood type or them having different genetics and more. We will have joining us a very important guest, I guess you could say with firsthand knowledge. Her name is Ronita, and she is and has been a targeted individual for various reasons, and we will be talking to her tonight. She will be taking questions and your comments. We both will. And so we will take a short break, and we'll allow those listeners who wish to take part in our live chat to do so. But get ready for a very exciting program. We'll be right back right after this song.
Looking for a reason, driven by the heart, fighting for a season, with sadness fall apart. Tell me not to worry, tell me to be strong, be my true reminder of where my love belongs. We'll be cutting edge, make a brand new sketch. Fire in the heart, flipping hearts around. We'll be changing all that's wrong. And baby, hold on, bring it on. We'll be running the show, bring it on. Take it all as we go, bring it on, let's go, bring it on, let's roll the dice, bring it on tonight. Let me take you higher, reaching for the sky, sitting by the fire. Here we are at last. We'll be cutting edge, make a brand new sketch. Fire in the heart, flipping hearts around. We'll be changing all that's wrong. And baby, hold on, bring it on.
And we are back. As I put in the chat, we're so glad you're here, Ronita. If you would, you can go ahead and say hello to everyone. I say everyone. They've not yet joined the chat yet, but those that we have people that join the chat and people that just listen. So feel free to just go ahead and say hello, and we'll check your mic and make sure everything is up to par.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Yes, that's right. Happy New Year. We're going to start this new year off with a bang. Ronita listened to the first show that I did on Rh negative blood, mainly because it was something that was on my mind, something that directly affected me, and it's something that is very dear to my heart, and so she listened to the first show and contacted me, and I thank you very much that you did. I wish more people would. Also, there's a woman on YouTube that contacted me, and we'll get into that later. But Ronita, if you would just kind of give us a your history, your life. Hey, Jacob. And just know that you're among people who are very much just like you, and we're on your side. So just give us a synopsis of Ronita.
Okay, so a very short summary is that I'm a targeted individual. I learned of this. I'm right now 43 years old, soon to be 44. And I learned of this right around the age of 40. So just as I was turning 40. Anyway, I'm a former federal employee. I did paralegal work in the government 15 plus years. And I began to experience really weird things on the job. And so in putting two and two together, I learned that was associated with a whistleblower situation where I was not the whistleblower, but I had a conversation with a whistleblower. And it's just like things began to, spiral downhill from there. And so at the point that I began to put all this together, I just kind of look back over those past few years, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's why this occurred, that's why that occurred, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I began to do all kinds of research because all kinds of things began to happen to me, both on the job and off the job. And I just began to experience a lot of harassment or retaliation. At the point that it became too much, I went on and I resigned from the job. And I absolutely loved that position. Like, I loved my job. And so I didn't necessarily want to leave, but the harassment did become too much. I thought at the time that maybe leaving the job and, moving on, I thought that, I could kind of resume some sense of normalcy. That did not happen at all. So things only got worse, at home in terms of the things that I would experience. And, I mean, it's unreal. I've described it sometimes to people as, if you've ever seen that movie with Will Smith, Enemy of the State. Like, that's exactly what it felt like.
That's
and,
nightmare.
Those are some of the things that I was experiencing in real life. So as I began to do all this research online, that's how I discovered that I was a targeted individual. That's how I discovered, these directed energy weapons, EMF weapons, electromagnetic, frequency weapons, et cetera, just all sorts of stuff I discovered. I did not realize at that time that any of this was connected to my blood type. But because I've always known that I'm Rh negative, and I've always known that I may be negative. I've been knowing that most of my life. But I had no idea that I would be monitored and tracked because of it, subjected to non-consensual experimentation because of it, et cetera, et cetera.
So you are AB negative, which is the most rare blood type.
Right.
Less than 1% of the population has AB negative. Now, as far as what they call the purist, and that's don't take that the wrong way. It's just that someone with O negative, which I have, we can only take O negative blood, but we're the universal donor.
Right.
So I think O negative is about 6 or 7% of the population, and AB negative is it's the most rare. So hats off to you, Ronita.
Yeah, only is it the rare, but the African American and AB negative is extremely rare.
It is.
Like it's hardly ever seen.
Yes, absolutely.
And just in minorities in general, it's rare that that's ever seen. And so again, I had no idea, growing up or anything that that all this other be taking place behind the scenes. And so the more I did research, the more I participated in, TI support calls, et cetera. Just more and more came out. And just as discovering different information, as I'm hearing different people's stories and everything, and I can relate, wholeheartedly, it just made me look back over my life, and not just my life, but my mother's life as well. She's also African-American, AB negative. I'm not sure of my grandfather's blood type, but I do know that we all have just experienced a lot of strange stuff, like a lot of strange encounters,
like
constant difficulty in life, and surveying other.
Just with normal things, or are you talking about things that we would consider paranormal, or paranormal things?
Strange medical encounter. I mean, I've had just a lot of left field comments, out of the blue, random comments and questions, things like that. Just different encounters and experiences, and especially things dealing with medical professionals, which, again, I mean, you believe that these are people you can trust, but looking back, I'm like, oh, wow, I was being lied to for many years, and just outright, blatantly lied to, them performing unnecessary, I mean, all kinds of stuff. I've gone through so much, it's unreal. So much so that while I was pregnant with my daughter, so what I was going to say is that I've been targeted lifelong since birth. I've been targeted generationally, so it has not just been me. It's also been my mother since birth. It's also been my grandfather who fought in World War II. And I believe he was subjected to human experimentation during World War II. And I feel that they've just been, monitoring us, tracking us, doing all sorts of stuff behind the scenes from that time. So I don't know how far back this goes, but I believe that it goes at least back to my grandfather in World War II. Going back to my daughter, but I was pregnant with my daughter. There comes a certain point in your pregnancy where they have you take some tests. You have to drink a really sugary drink, this sweet drink, and they're performing some tests. And so the results of that come back, and they tell me that, it's very likely that your child is going to be born, because I found out that with a lot of these covert programs, they're trauma-based. They're trauma-based programs. Anyway, They tell me that there's a strong chance that my daughter's going to be born with spina bifida or Down syndrome. And I mean, they describe every like worst case scenario you can imagine, and I'm devastated. You
Fear
know, I'm
tactics.
20 at the time.
Fear tactics, right?
Right. But I don't know. I'm believing. I'm 20 years old. This is my first child, and I'm believing that what they are telling me is actual and factual. You know, I have no idea that, like I said, all this other stuff is taking place behind the scenes. Well, anyway, they put me on a high-risk pregnancy. They told me that I needed to be seen every single week. So I had to go to the doctor every week. I had to have sonograms every single week. Like, I've never heard of that. From anybody else around me, I've never heard of that, period. And what I now realize today is they were keeping a close watch on her development, so you had me coming in weekly. They wanted me to do an amnio, but even back then, you know, I would question different things and I would do research. So I researched that, and I did not like what I found. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing an amnio. You know, there's too much risk involved, and I just did not see the need for it. And so I now believe that they were actually trying to collect her DNA while she was in my womb to see whether she was going to be Rh negative or not. Like, that's what I strongly believe. What's worse, I just posted this on Twitter recently about how all these doctors who have seen us for, you know, various reasons or whatever, they kind of disappear. So they either leave the office or leave the practice. You know, all I know is that I'm being sent some notice in the mail that, you know, this is no longer your primary care provider, or, you know, this particular doctor is leaving. You need to choose another doctor, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Or, you know, one has been chosen for me, and they're sending me the new information. And I'm just like, wow. So, I mean, it took me a while to realize, oh, that's been a pattern also. And so the hospital that myself, my mother, and my daughter were born in no longer exists. I mean, it's unreal to me. This stuff is unreal to me. That hospital that they had me going to every single week, you know, while I was pregnant and everything or whatever, that hospital no longer exists. In addition to that, none of us are in our high school yearbooks. I mean, and these are all questions that I've been posing to this, you know, entire Rh negative community that I'm a part of. And 9 times out of 10, that's the case. And people are telling me, oh, you know, the hospital I was born in, it burned down. Or the hospital I was born in is now been turned into this. I mean,
Right.
this is there's too much to just be a coincidence.
Right. Well, it's just like, you know, me, you know, whenever I had my, you know, blood test, my, you know, genetic test, I called, I contacted them 3 years later, and I said, I would like to have my, you know, test results, and they were really, it was like, oh, it's him again, and they said, your test results were lost, damaged, or, you know, something like that. And I said, so how do I get them? Well, they're no longer available. They're gone. And I'm thinking, okay. I said, well, don't you keep medical records at least 7 years? Well, yes, but your test results, you know, imagine that. And they're gone. And so I take that as lost, destroyed, whatever, as nothing more than, yeah, they were taken because, like I've shared, you know, before, the entire atmosphere just got really dark. And my wife, she leaned over and she said, I'm beginning to feel threatened. She said, and I said, well, it wouldn't surprise me if they kicked down the door, guys wearing hazmat suits with rifles came in and said, come with us, you know. And so we both agreed pretty quick to leave and not request anything because it was just this unbearable. Well, not unbearable, but it was a change from the friendly handshake. You know, hey, how are you? I'm talking. They kept their distance from me, and I was not intimidating them. I was not being rude. I was just. It was like they did not even want to get near me, and they kept their distance, and it was just very, very
they
strange.
Are being. I mean, it's a lot going on as far as people's reaction, not necessarily to our DNA, our blood type, or any of that, but folks, their arms are being twisted, you know, behind the scenes. Okay, so that may not have been the case when you got the initial reactions from the medical professionals.
Mm.
Those were probably, you know, genuine reactions. But from that point, you know, behind the scenes, folks are definitely having their arms twisted. And this is medical professionals and otherwise. Pretty much most people you encounter.
Mm.
So I've experienced it with family, friends, co-workers, clergy, you know, police officers. I mean, just, yeah, all across the board. And not everyone. I mean, I have just it's few and far between that folks maintain integrity.
Just a real quick, I need to take a quick break. We will be back in 2 minutes. Just keep those thoughts, and we'll be right back.
It's a rainy night coming late out of the dojo. No lights, dark out on the parking lot. Looking for my car, thought I left it here before. Get a feeling that something ain't right. Moving shadows, hear the sound of 2 feet. See my car, where my keys, kinda getting spooky. Oh God, now it's coming from behind. My cell is gone dead as I slowly turn around and go. Suddenly, monsters all around me. All I see, 100 ninja zombies. Suddenly, monsters all around me. They don't know I'm swinging like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee. My heart's beating fast now, I'm about to pass out. Suddenly my brain's letting go and I laugh out loud as my elbows crash into an eyebrow. Thinking what the hell, I'm gonna make it somehow. Run into a closed liquor store, break the window. Grab a bottle of gin, take a swig, oh no. Stepping on a slimy lump and no, they're lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, monsters all around me. All I see, 100 ninja zombies. Suddenly, monsters all around me. They don't know I'm swinging like Bruce Lee. Suddenly, monsters all around me. All I see, 100 ninja zombies. Suddenly, monsters all around me. They
Okay, and we're back. Okay, you were telling us a little bit about your background. So if you want to continue where you left off.
I was just saying how a lot of folks become involved in that, like what you were experiencing as far as your treatment, you know, when you came to ask for your medical records. And I just wanted to mention that I've definitely, as I was saying to you before, I've experienced my records being changed, records being deleted. I put in a request. I did a FOIA request for my grandfather's his military records, including his medical records. I did a request for NARA. And basically, first they put me through a bunch of changes, and there was, some back and forth. And they wanted more paperwork, and so I provided them everything they needed. And they essentially came back with nothing. Oh, we didn't find anything for him other than, this single pay stub. That was it. And they had a very convenient response that, oh, it was likely burned up in the fire, of such and such a year, at this location in this year, et cetera. I'm like, wow, that's convenient. But even in requesting my own personnel records, of the agency that I left, they gave me a lot of problems with that. When I did finally get it, it was incomplete. It did not include everything I had requested. And so I had to hound them for that because those last 4 years that I was in the position, like I said, paralegal/research specialist, those records were missing. And I'm like, of all records, and these are the most recent records, why would these be missing? And so I had to hound them to finally, get everything. Medical records have been changed. I've had medical records where nurses, none of this makes any sense whatsoever. But I had a couple requests for authorizations for the release of records where nurses went behind me. Now, I had to fill the form out to request copies of my records myself. They went behind me. The entire forms were filled out by these two nurses. They were witnessed by the nurses, so everything is in their handwriting. And they actually took my signature, cut it from another document, pasted it onto these, authorizations,
That's
claiming
crazy.
that I'm giving them permission to request these records. Now, there was no reason for that. There's no logical reason that I would even do that. But if you look at the dates that the records were requested, I was still in the hospital at the time, so why would you even be requesting my entire medical record while I'm still in the hospital? Okay. In addition to that, though, one nurse was requesting that the entire medical record be sent to a Walgreens pharmacy. That makes no sense at all. Why would it did not have any contact person's name or anything like that. It was just, it essentially said, we want to have these medical records, and they took the time to check every single box. We want to have this entire medical record sent to a nearby Walgreens. Well, Walgreens does not receive medical records. They do not, review medical records or anything like that. Why on earth would anyone at Walgreens need my medical records? They wanted a copy of my medical records in order to go and make changes, delete whatever they wanted to delete or whatever it was they wanted to do, and that's precisely what was taking place. But at any rate,
Well,
I reported all of this because that's a clear HIPAA violation. It's
absolutely.
wrong on many levels. You have forged my signature, et cetera, et cetera. And so, so many incidents like this have occurred, and I have reported this, to the right folks. There have been, even court cases. There have been court cases where I have experienced some injustice, and these things just are not being thoroughly investigated. Like, they're just not being taken seriously at all, but they're not being investigated or anything. Well, those were clear HIPAA violations. I sent copies of the two authorizations. I sent the copy of my authorization that I actually submitted. And I'm just like, what sense does it make? They did not investigate it. And so, like I said, this has happened a number of times with different things. And so I was recently, earlier this year, I was assaulted on a metro bus, and the entire thing was caught on video. And so that was not properly investigated. I had to call transit police myself. I also got MPD involved. I ended up seeing this same person because I was told, they had an investigator contact me, and they're like, oh, well, we're going to do this and so, and we're going to put out a bolo, which was be on the lookout for this woman. We did get the video footage, and, it was crystal clear, so that's a good thing, and da-da-da. The best we can do, if you should see her or run into her again, make sure you call transit and da-da-da. Well, that actually happened. I saw her. And she and some friends of hers were fighting at the time. I'm like, wow. So I called transit police from my cell phone immediately. And I actually asked someone, I'm like, hey, could you please, call MPD for me in reference to this fight over here? I was just assaulted by this young lady recently. And could you please get them here? So both of them showed up. I had to positively identify her, which I did. And they arrested her. Amen. I was so thankful for that. So she was arrested. She did do some jail time. When we show up in court, they brought her out, in a jumpsuit and shackles and everything. And her look had changed a bit. She had dyed her head, et cetera. Anyway, they escorted me out of the courtroom. This is
They escorted you out of the courtroom?
They escorted me, so when our case was called, and she was there on a couple other cases as well. I wasn't the only, person apparently, but anyway, it was a couple other cases, and so that she was involved in them all. And yeah, so they asked me. This is the U.S. Attorney's Office. They asked me if I could step outside the courtroom for a minute, and I'm just like, well, why? Because they just called my case. Well, could you just step out and, wait here for a sec? There's some confusion about, identity, da-da-da. I'm just like, it made no sense. Well, they essentially, not right then and there, what they did that day was they got a new court date. So they got a court date for about a month or so later. Again, it makes no sense at all. It makes no sense that you would escort me out the courtroom or any of that. So between that court date and the upcoming one, they found some way to have the case dismissed. And basically what I was told, I got a phone call the day before we were supposed to show up in court again from the U.S. Attorney's Office, from a different U.S. attorney, stating that, the other attorney, he's out on leave, and we're going to suspend the case for now. And, we can always bring it again later. None of it made any sense. She had served this amount of jail time thus far, and we do want you to know that is, it has a lot to do with, her assaulting you, et cetera, et cetera. It just made no sense at all. But again, when I am looking at patterns, when I'm looking at things that have happened over the course of my life, I'm like, oh, wow. When I think about it, any court cases where someone has, because I've been involved in a hit and run, the case basically was thrown out.
Patterns do not lie. Patterns do not lie. I mean, when you look at
right.
Patterns through time, patterns do not lie. It's just like numbers. Numbers do not lie.
Exactly.
So if you've had the same pattern, then it's real no matter what anybody says, no matter how much fun they make of you and say you're crazy and everything. That's one thing
and
that.
The court,
right.
When you talk about your records, your records came up missing. All of these cases, if you look at them today, it says, records have been destroyed. This is the exact feedback, I get when I look at these dockets and everything. Oh, records have been destroyed. This case was no paper, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, how can that be the case for every single case?
Right.
Again, where I have been assaulted or just wronged in some way. There's been some injustice against me. and the case just disappears, essentially, you're making it as if the case does not exist. Now, you compound that with the fact that all of the hospitals that we were born in no longer exist. That, again, has to do with records. None of us are in our high school yearbooks. I'm not. My mother isn't. And my daughter isn't.
Okay, well, I haven't had that. That I know of. I was in my high school yearbook, so it's from your experience, it's almost like they're trying to wipe you out of history.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. And when I know that you all do have the capability of time travel and everything, I mean, because that's another thing that I was looking at.
That's definitely something that we've covered here on the podcast is CERN and time travel, and it's something that you and I talked about briefly. More, the more that I research CERN, it's as most of I'm a Christian, but not the traditional Christian.
Right.
I have very much different views on things, but the place where CERN started their Large Hadron Collider and the 16.8 mile circuit, or whatever you want to call it, is built on a place in a place taken after the name of the god Apollo, and it's very very ancient, very sacred ground, and it's really something because the Bible, and there again, I'm not preaching or anything, but I just want to read to you what the Bible says concerning, I'll read it, and as always, don't take my word for it, make up your own mind. It says in Revelation chapter 9, verse 11, it says, "And they have a king over them, the angel of the abyss. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek he has the name Apollyon, which is literally, Abaddon means destruction, and Apollyon means destroyer. Now, it says that that at the beginning of chapter 9, it says, "And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven, which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit, like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit." What we're talking about is a black hole, a bottomless pit. We're talking about a black hole. And with this having the name from the ancient time of Apollo, it's very, very telling. This would, and also the 16.8 miles, circuit. There's the six. The 16.8, which is the numbers of the divine or the golden ratio, or it's actually 1.618, and you find that in nature over and over and over again. Not just in nature, but it is very much embedded in nature itself. It's called the divine ratio, the golden ratio, the golden section that many different people used, artists that were very, very popular. I guess you could say they were masters. They did the masterpieces, like Leonardo da Vinci used the golden ratio and things like that. So so it's a very important esoteric number, and when you have that number and you have the place, which is a very small town in France or by France, and then the name of the small Swiss town correlates with Apollyon coming out of the bottomless pit. That's pretty. I don't know. It just doesn't give me doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. But this is pretty strange. I'm checking my YouTube channel, and it says I'm now an invalid user. So, wow, it never ceases to amaze me. Anyway, we were talking briefly about how the this is how we perceive reality as being real, of course. But what is real? It could very well be digital, and if you think about it, now all of our records, all of our money, everything is digital. So Ronita and I, we were talking about that, and I told her, I said, well, that's the reason that everything was changed to digital from analog, is so everyone can be accounted for. And that's a very troubling truth if you think about it. Ronita, your thoughts on that? Are you still there? Did we lose you?
Sorry, yes. I
okay.
muted myself. I muted myself so that I could just, listen to you.
Sure,
I'm sorry.
sure. No
that's
problem.
That's very true. And I've been given warnings periodically on Twitter to, back your information up, whatever it is, to back your data up. And so, for example, when you were talking about going to get a copy of your records, I'm assuming that you did not have like an initial copy, but I have been suggesting to people to keep both. To definitely hold on to your manual records. And I know from personal experience that kind of stuff can disappear. It's happened to me a million times at this point. But what I have done as a backup is to, store data to, USB drives and, portable drives and things like that, so that you do have a copy. And just, store it to something that you can keep on you. I just feel that
right.
It's good to have a backup. So,
well,
you can have your manual files. Make sure you have the electronic, files as well. Just, make sure.
Best thing for for me and Denzel in the book of Eli is what he did. Memorize it, and I'm joking, but truthfully, that's the best way. I mean, and not preaching to anybody. I'm just saying biblically, that's what the Bible says is put it in your heart, put it in your mind, write it on your heart, so that, I've had people contact me and they're like, California's taking away the Bible. What if it goes, nationwide? And I said, well, so what? And they're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, so what? I said, because when it's on your heart, when it's in your heart, when you put it in your mind, and I'm not saying quote scripture and verse. I'm saying the truth. Love.
Right.
You love, and God is love. Right from wrong. That's no big deal. Well,
when it comes to data, whether it's, medical records, financial records, whatever the case may be, I've been advising people to just, basically back things up, to back it up more than once, to back it up in more than one way. So, have your manual records, have your electronic records, store copies in more than one location.
Well,
that's the advice that I've been giving people, because I have, it's been a nightmare what I've gone through.
One thing, that I want to read is this is an article that I found, everystudent.com, and it's a genetic research. It's about genetic research, and it says, "Is God real?" Again, me. I'm not preaching. I'm just reading an article. You make up your own mind, please. It says science gives ample reason to believe in God. Why is DNA important? British philosopher Dr. Anthony Flew was the leading spokesperson for atheism, actively involved in debate after debate. However, scientific discoveries within the last 30 years brought him to a conclusion he could not avoid. In a video interview, he stated, quote, "Superintelligence is the only good explanation for the origin of life and the complexity of nature," end of quote. Prominent in his conclusion were the discoveries of DNA. Here's why. DNA in our cells is very similar to an intricate computer program. Now, I've always said this, is that I have always believed, or I've always had the feeling that we were in a simulation. We just didn't know it. It says a computer program is made up of a series of ones and zeros called a binary code. The sequencing and ordering of these ones and zeros is what makes the computer program work properly. In the same way, DNA is made up of 4 chemicals abbreviated as the letters A, T, G, and C. Much like the ones and zeros, these letters are arranged in the human cell like this, and it says CGTG, TG, ACT, CGC, and so on. The order in which they are arranged constructs the cell's actions. What is amazing is that within the tiniest space in every cell of your body, this code is 3 billion letters long. Now that's every cell. Every cell. To grasp the amount of DNA information in just one cell, a live reading of that code at a rate of 3 letters per second would take 31 years, even if reading continued day and night. But wait, there's more. It has been determined that 99.9% of your DNA is similar to everyone else's genetic makeup. What is uniquely you comes in the fractional difference in how those 3 billion letters are sequenced in your cells. Says the U.S. government, is able to identify everyone in our country by the arrangement of a 9-digit social security number, yet inside every cell in your body is a 3 billion lettered DNA structure that belongs only to you. This code identifies you and continually instructs your cell's behavior. You can see why DNA is important. Dr. Francis Collins, director of the Human Genome Project that mapped the human DNA structure, said that one can think of DNA as an instructional script, a software program sitting in the nucleus of the cell. Perry Marshall, an information specialist, comments on the implications of this. There has never existed a computer program that wasn't designed, whether it is a code or a program or a message given through a language, there is always an intelligent mind behind it. Just as former atheist Dr. Anthony Flew questioned, it is legitimate to ask oneself regarding this 3 billion letter code instructing the cell, who wrote this script? Who placed this working code inside the cell? It's like walking along the beach and you see in the sand, Mike loves Michelle. You know the waves rolling up on the beach didn't form that. A person wrote that. It is a precise message. It is a clear communication. In the same way, the DNA structure is a complex 3 billion lettered script informing and directing the cell's process. How can one explain this sophisticated messaging coding residing in our cells? On June 26, 2000, President Clinton congratulated those who completed the human genome sequencing. President Clinton said, quote, "Today we are learning the language in which God created life. We are gaining ever more awe for the complexity, the beauty, the wonder of God's most divine and sacred gift." End of quote. Dr. Francis Collins, director of the Human Genome Project, followed Clinton to the podium stating, "It is humbling for me and awe-inspiring to realize that we have caught the first glimpse of our own instruction book, previously known only to God." When looking, and when I say God, I'm talking about the Creator, the Source, not some grandfather bearded figure floating around in the heavens. When looking at the DNA structure within the human body, we cannot escape the presence of incredibly intelligent design. According to the Bible, which is in itself incredibly complex, God is not only the author of our existence, but He, or it, is the relationship that makes our existence meaningful. All the intangibles in life that we crave, enough strength for any situation, joy, wisdom, and knowing we are loved, God alone gives these to us as we listen to Him and trust Him. He, or it, is our greatest reliable guide in life. Just as the DNA has been engineered to instruct the cell, He offers to instruct us to make our lives function well for His glory and for our sake because He loves us. And the Bible says, plainly over and over, God is love. God is love. Why is DNA important? It is one more proof for God. He designed our bodies. He can also be trusted to design your life. Now that gets into, a little preaching sounding to me, and I never want to sound like that. My view is when you experience truth, no one has to preach to you. No one has to shove it down your throat. You either accept it or you reject it. It's that simple. So you're never going to catch me pounding and saying, believe, believe, believe. That's the worst thing I could do. And truthfully, it's not my job to do that. It's just not. And but back to how the cell or how the DNA is like a computer code. Ronita, think about when Moses went up on Mount Sinai and he was given the law. And so many times this has been depicted as him coming down from the mountain with 2 big granite stones with 5 commandments on one and 5 on the other, the 10 commandments. But that's not right. Moses was given the entire law, the first 5 books of the Bible, and 613 laws to be exact, that were to be followed, and that wouldn't have fit on 2 granite stones. When I researched deeper into the ancient Jewish texts, the Midrash and the Talmud, it's quite a different story. It says that God wrote the law on small stones that were blue stones, and that those blue stones were blue topaz, and that it could be rolled up like a scroll, but was as hard as diamonds, as hard as a rock. And I saw about 6 months ago, I saw that Sony or Samsung had made this computer screen where you can wrap it around a pole, or you can hang it on your wall, or you can roll it up like a scroll and carry it. And I'm thinking, okay. And then the Bible itself, as far as the chapters and the books and all that, that's all man-made. The Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible were given to Moses in one continuous sequence. I believe it was 345,000 letters. Unbroken. There was no periods. There was no commas. Nothing. Just, unbroken sequence. And I've heard people say, yeah, that's a code. What kind of code? You got it. Computer code. Computer code. So when you look at it like that, Moses could have come down from the mountain with, 2 Palm Pilots directly from God and say, hey, I've got the whole law right here, bub. And, and it says that when Moses appeared to God, whatever God is, whoever God is, literally, it said that he looked down and he was walking on blue topaz, the blue transparent stone. And so for Moses to be up on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, he wasn't there for just 10 commandments. Okay, that just doesn't make sense. He was there a while because it took a while. And when you study the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, it is actually, it forms a multi-dimensional layer, kind of like a cube, depth, height, length, width. And when you go through the Bible, you see that. You experience truth on different levels, different dimensions. And just like, and I need to say this before I forget it, when God told Abraham, he said, take the, sacrifice, which, this is back then, take the sacrifices, cut them in half. He did. He said, put the pieces on one side, put the pieces on another side, and walk through them. Well, Abraham, in your mind, if you can read that, you can see that Abraham's walking in like a figure 8 through these pieces of this, sacrifice that was made. What is he doing? He's painting a picture of the double helix, your DNA. Boom, mic drop. Have you considered that?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mhm.
Have Jacob, Mona, Nazarene, those of you that are listening, have you ever considered that, for a long time I read that and I'm like, why are they, why is that written the way it's written? I mean, so he walks around the pieces of the sacrifice. Big deal. Well, joke's on me, because it is a huge deal. It's God saying, hey, this is it. This is the life force that you were given, that was breathed into your nostrils, into Adam's nostrils, into everybody's nostrils since then. It's the spark of life. It's DNA. And I was talking to Renita previously, and I said, I believe that that's the part where God, the creator, the source, implanted his own genetic, his own DNA or whatever into us, the spark of life, the light of life. It talks about the light and the life. Well, that's it. What else could it be?
When it's talking about us being made in his image.
Right. Now, if you read, Genesis, you find that there was a first creation. Something wasn't right about it. Just something wasn't there. The second creation, it said God breathed into his spirit into the nostrils of Adam, and Adam became a living being. What does that mean? Were the first beings not living? Well, yes, they were, but this was different. This was the life force. This was the light. This was the life, the true life. From God, the Creator, the Source Himself, or don't shoot me down, herself, themselves. God is not just male. God would not be God if it was just male. God is male and female. It says He created Adam and Eve, created Adam in His image, man and woman He created in His image. And a lot of you are going to be shocked, but the word God is Hebrew Elohim, which is feminine. Whoa. Catholic Church, hate me all you want.
That, for me, the way I've always viewed that is that, you have two parents.
That's right.
You have the mother and you have the father, and the father masculine, the mother, feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I look at how, men are usually more stern, and they're the disciplinarian.
They're the enforcer.
Et cetera, et cetera. There are different attributes, that come from that male.
Wait till your daddy gets home.
But then with the female side, you have the nurturer, and you have someone who, I don't want to say it's caring, but just that softer side, you know.
Right.
They have the compassion, and they are a nurturer, they have the empathy, et cetera, et cetera. And that is the way I view God. Like, that's how I view God. I feel like
me too.
He is a whole. He is a whole, and He has both sides, and He has all those attributes, And that for Him, He uses them in perfect, balance, So He's firm and He's stern when He needs to be.
Right.
And He's compassionate and merciful, other times. So I just feel that's who He is, and that's the way that I view Him. When you were talking about just the DNA, I think about how important genealogy is, So, I mean, because they talk about those lines, they talk about the bloodline.
Yes.
That's very important.
And
all throughout the Bible.
And he begat, and he begat, and he begat. Yeah,
exactly,
there's reason for that.
Exactly. All of that is stated in there for a reason. It's basically, showing the bloodline. I mean, when it comes down to heirs, when it comes down to inheritance, all that stuff it's very important in the Bible. But what we were just discussing briefly before the podcast, as far as the technology piece, and I was saying how that has blown my mind because I essentially feel like, everything that we're seeing and experiencing in the world today is Revelations playing itself out. Like that is strongly how I feel, especially when I don't know if you're familiar at all with the UN's 2030 agenda.
Yes.
I mean, people have even, so when I think about that, and, here we are in 2019 now, that's just 11 years away, and, you're essentially describing this utopia in the 2030 agenda.
Also,
how
you have Elon Musk, which I think is one of the good guys, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He said that he did not see mankind going beyond 2030. And he, along with, I couldn't believe it, but Stephen Hawking.
He did say that?
Yes.
Oh,
Elon
wow.
Musk. And he said he was one of the main proponents with none other than Stephen Hawking against CERN. He said, you better stop what you're doing. You better stop what you're doing because you're...
what is going to happen as far as AI.
Right.
And they've been warning about that, yeah. So, I mean, I'm aware of that piece, but I definitely wasn't aware that he said that. That's amazing. But
he said that about 3 weeks ago.
Wow, I need to find it. I need to find out.
I can send it to you.
Book. The part that really gets me is this. It didn't even take me, I didn't even have to get very far into this 2030 agenda, whatever. I'm like, oh, wow, you all plan to have a world that is crime-free, poverty-free, et cetera, by the year 2030.
Yeah.
That means a lot has to take place between now and then.
Well,
and not only that, if your utopia is to be built, if your utopia is to be in place by 2030, then that means you have to wipe a lot of us out and rebuild. So that your utopia is in place. And that's a very short period of time.
Well, one thing.
Considering.
One thing that I've had people say is I was in this group that was a very large group on Facebook, and there was a man that saw my picture, and he said, "I know who you are. I know what you are. You're one of the vipers. You're one of the Nephilim." He said, "I can see it in your eyes, your green eyes." He said, he said, you're a destroyer. And then he said, "But I don't want you mad at me." He said, "So, don't come after me." And I'm like, "Whoa, buddy, calm down there. Take you a chill pill, I will say this.
I think people don't know.
Yeah.
People don't know, and people fear what they don't know.
Well, one thing that I will say though is that that if that is true, then I'm saying it here, I will never go along with the agenda.
Right.
When it involves, if it involves hurting or doing away with, people. No, I'm not going to do it. So just like in the ancient times, there were there were 200 watcher angels that were that chose to do something bad. They were bad. But people forget there were good watchers. There were good watchers. So, you know.
And I feel like we have a choice. I feel like,
everything boils down to
free
choice.
will and everything. And so that's what I was saying when you were asking about why they would fear you. I mean, if I had any idea about why they would fear you or why they fear us,
or if you had similar
I do
experiences.
believe we have divine power. I really do. Even in the Bible, when you're reading about the Nephilim, and I mean, just if we were to think about it that way, like if I was to think about, okay, I'm part human, I'm part angel. Again, I feel that lifelong they've been trying to sway me in a certain direction, and just who I am within, they can't do it. And so when you were expressing just not being materialistic and not being, swayed by money, moved by money or anything, that's how I am. That's who I am. Like, I can identify 100% when you say that, because that has never mattered to me in life.
Well,
that is secondary.
You and every person that's currently in the live chat, same way. And I have a Facebook group that all of these people, these precious people, are a part of, and they're the same way. And
right.
It's the Spiritual Advancement Society, and you are more than welcome to be a part. We have a lot of fun, and we actually call it our family, because it's friends that have become family. And but there's
that's nice.
There's a let's see here. In the movie, and all of you that know me know I have to mention this, The Matrix, because Ronita brought this up. She brought up The Matrix. She said, I believe that we're living like in The Matrix. And I'm like, oh, I like her already. I'm like, wow, she's sweet talking me now. Made my head turn. But it says, well, when the very first Matrix, when Smith pulls up, Agent Smith pulls up, he his license plate is it says IS 45 7, and I think that's correct. It says and it says there. It says let's see. Well. Let's see. Here it is. It says, that men may know from the rising to the setting of the sun that there is no one besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. The one forming light and creating darkness, causing well-being and creating evil. I am the Lord who does all these things. Now, let me read that again. That men may know from the rising to the setting of the sun that there is no one besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. The one forming light and creating darkness, causing well-being and creating evil. I am the Lord who does all these things. That's pretty shocking. But when you think about it, when the Bible says God is all-powerful, who else, what other power could perform such things?
Who else, what?
Huh?
Could you repeat that?
It says that men may know from the rising to the setting of the sun, that there is no...
No. Your comment afterwards.
We say, the Bible says that God is all powerful, God is all knowing, God is all present. So who else could form the light and the darkness? Who else could form well-being and create evil? He says, or it says, I, the Lord, who does all these things. And that's Isaiah chapter 45, verse 6 and 7.
I've had someone actually pose that question to me. And so, well, if God created all things, then that means God created evil. That he created,
right.
Satan, the devil, created evil, etc. And the only logic I could come up with behind that is that, God wants us to choose him, basically.
Right.
And not that Satan is an equal. Satan is not equal or equivalent to God. He desires to be, he desires to be number one or be more powerful than God. But
well,
in terms of balance and everything, Satan is not God's equal.
Well,
but I think that in terms of the way I view it is, when it comes to loving a person, like love is a choice,
mm-hmm.
and we have to choose him. And I feel like we kind of had to have that choice. So even Adam and Eve, in the beginning, they were able to enjoy his presence and, enjoy everything he had provided and everything else. And still, it's like that temptation was placed there to see.
Well, one thing, one thing is have you ever, and not just you, but those of you that are listening, have you ever done something? Have you ever made the choice to do something that you knew was going to end up harming you, harming those you love, creating a nightmare for you, and for some reason, you don't know why, but you did it anyway? Do you know why that could be? And it's talked about.
That's the battle between the spirit and the flesh.
Well, it is actually another very important part in the Matrix movie. And I know that sounds insane because I'm quoting a movie, but the lady that is the Oracle, she tells Neo, she says, you believe you're here to make a choice. She says, but you're not. You've already made the choice. You're just here now to understand why you made the choice you did. And that spoke volumes to me. It's like, wow, what if this is true? What if the reason that we make choices that we know are bad choices, but we just can't help ourselves? Why do we do it? It's because, could it be that we're not here to make the choice? We're here to understand why we made the choice we made? And I've always felt like this was not my first rodeo. Not at all. And, Bible people, well, not Bible people, but, religious people are going to hate me as usual. But Jesus said, they asked him, his followers said, when will Elijah return? And Jesus is like, he already has. John the Baptist was Elijah. For those who can accept it. Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, people read right over that. It's like preachers won't touch that with a 10-foot pole because that might insinuate reincarnation, and boy, they don't want to go there. Because if John the Baptist was Elijah, then Jesus would be Elisha, which was Elijah's follower. And if you read the Bible, Jesus was, kind of a follower of his cousin John the Baptist, a little bit different, but in the Bible, Elijah did 7 miracles. Elisha did twice as many, 14. And in the Bible, John the Baptist was, had his own power. Jesus had his own power. But they both came from the same source, But when Jacob, you say, says we do it because that's the choice we are meant to make. Exactly right. And the way that Jesus talks about it, and please, again, I can't say this enough, don't think that this is me preaching religion. I'm just simply presenting.
Oh, feel free to speak about spirituality as much as you want.
Right,
I love it.
I cannot stand religion, but I love spirituality.
Right.
And there's a big difference. But it's Jacob says that's why we almost feel compelled to make those choices. Exactly. We are compelled. We are compelled to make them. And we do. And it's like, why did I do that? It's like the man that risked everything by cheating on his wife. I mean, when he really doesn't want to, but it just happens and he loses everything. Why? How do you explain that? It's and
I mean, if you think of it, God being Alpha Omega, the beginning and the end. I mean, it's kind of like everything. Even when I'm thinking about Revelation, it's kind of like everything has to play itself out. Like everything has to play itself out, and we are constantly growing and evolving.
You are so right, because
that's exactly the way I feel.
Jesus actually says, he says, not one jot, not one tittle will be taken away from Scripture as it has been written until everything comes to pass. And what he's saying is, not one crossing of a T, not one dotting of an I will be left out until everything is completed. Now, I'm sorry, but does that sound like a screenplay to you? Does that sound like a computer program that has been programmed by a programmer who is so far advanced that Jesus is basically saying, if you can crack the code, buddy, go for it. But you're going to be, you're going to need lunches for, a few 100,000 years.
Bible. It's,
well, modern day CERN.
So, what I was going to say earlier as far as the technology piece, and I was saying how everything that, we're witnessing and experiencing now is more or less like Revelation's playing itself out. And I was saying to you earlier that, like, I had no idea that this is how it would come about. And so I was talking about Satan being the prince of the air. And, this technology, this technology is so far advanced, we know some of the things that they're capable of, but we probably have no clue.
Right.
Everything, that they're capable of. And so,
but the 5G is not good.
Course, God knew all this would eventually, unfold, and we had no clue. So now, even just listening to you in this phone call, and with that in mind, and also considering the Matrix and everything else, it's just like now for me to go back. I've, read the Bible from cover to cover, quite a few times now, and again, not being religious, but just really wanting to understand, looking for guidance, et cetera, et cetera. To go through the Bible now with the knowledge that I have now, with the understanding that I have now, etc., yes, it probably would read totally different. Totally differently, because
one thing is
who knew? It's just like, who knew? Who knew any of this was possible?
one thing
You know, and
is
now that I do know, yeah. Yeah.
One thing that so many people contact me and they're like, I just don't feel like that I know God, or I know the source, or I know the Creator well enough. And I'm like, okay, well, welcome to the club, And they're like, what? Yeah, it's not like I get an email from him every day, from the Creator every day, and says, "Hey Shane, this is what's up." And this is the point I want to make: is Dr. Geordie Rose of CERN, D-Wave Quantum Computing, as most of you know, he has said publicly, and I'm saying this for Ronita's sake, just in case, but he says there are intelligent entities on the way, super advanced. He says that they are so advanced. He says they view humans like we view ants. He says they simply don't care. He says they're coming like a swarm, and he said they are like the H.P. Lovecraft wrote about the old ones, the ancient ones of old, and he said some people call them angels, some people call them demons. He said they're neither good nor bad, and pardon me here, but I'm quoting him. He says they simply don't give a shit about humans. And I'm thinking, okay, Dunsky, why are you letting them in? Why have they been contacted? Why are they on their way? This was in 2016, so this is 2019 now. By the way, Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, telling you this news and Happy New Year. Yeah, it's funny. But it's like, why would you do that unless you maybe made a deal with them? That's the only thing I can come up with is, they promised you certain things at the expense of selling out every human being basically on the face of the earth. But I have a different view on it. Is I know something that they don't know, and something that every person should know. I read this story about this little girl, like 8 or 9 years old, that actually hung herself because she was afraid of what CERN was going to do and what was coming. And so those of you that are listening out there, I'm telling you, do not be afraid.
Right.
Because we have something, you have something that they will never have. It's like Morpheus tells Neo. He says, I've seen agents punch through concrete walls. I've seen men empty entire clips in them and hit nothing but air. He says, but their strength and their speed will mean nothing to you when you're ready. And he says, are you trying to tell me I can dodge bullets? And he says, no, Neo. What I'm trying to tell you is when you're ready, you won't have to.
Right.
Well, what I'm telling you, and I'm telling everyone listening to this and the rebroadcast of this, is it's not how much you know the Creator. It's how much the Creator knows you.
Amen.
Her. Now let that sink in. Let that sink in. And the Creator loves you. You're made in her image. They're not. You have that divine spark. They don't. So no matter how strong, fast, intelligent they are, they will never be number one. And you are number one. You matter. They don't. So don't believe the hype.
Oh my goodness, I have to share something with you real quick.
Okay.
I have had a recurring dream since childhood. Basically, I've had this dream lifelong up until the point that I learned about this target. And so even that in itself just amazes me. So like I said, I found out about this target right around the age of 40. And I literally have had this dream from childhood up until about the age of 40. So at any rate, in the dream, I was always being hunted. And whenever I describe or explain it to people or whatever, I'm like, I can't explain it any other way other than being hunted. Because that is literally, you know, what was happening in the dream. That's the way it felt and everything else in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was always by some type of dark forces, like evil forces or whatever. So sometimes it would be vampires or demons or werewolves or monsters. All the times in these dreams, and it would be different. Like there would be people in the dream with me, family members, friends, you know, folks that I know, you know, would be in the dreams, and we would always break off in two teams. I mean, it's just because what's funny to me is, yeah, I've had these dreams all these years. So anyway, we would break off into two teams. I would go to strategize. No, okay, here's what we're going to do. You know, you know. And I would strategize, and basically whoever stuck with me in these dreams would always escape.
Mm-hmm.
So we always ended up getting away from whatever it was, you know, that was hunting us down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dream would we would get away, and then the dream would totally flip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it would go from this darkness and heaviness and everything else to just bliss.
Right.
You know, it's just like the sun will come out and everything is bright and it's beautiful and, you know, we're free, and I will wake up.
Well,
and when I think this was for years.
One thing that I just want to ask you, and, you know, those of you listening, just like in Alice in Wonderland, okay, there's a lot of truth in that, believe it or not. And one of the you know, characters ask her, says, what is memory if it just works one way? So it's my theory that we can have memories of the future and the past. It's just that many don't know how to, but they do have memories of the future. So so it's like that.
Those deja vu.
Genetic memories.
Which I used to get. Okay.
Genetic memory is something that I truly believe in, and I think that divine spark that these entities that Geordie Rose of D-Wave quantum computing that he's talking about and bragging about, I think that may be what they're after. Is they want that spark, they want that, I guess you could say in its raw form, to somehow give these entities what they don't have, what they're lacking, and but it doesn't work that way. You know,
that makes a lot of sense. I don't want to cut you off. I do want to share this real quick though.
Sure, go ahead.
Have you heard that we can't be cloned?
Yes, and that's true.
That RH negative can't be cloned.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And so even you know, I have been, I know for a fact, me and my family, we've been monitored, we've been tracked, for decades. And they study us like they literally study pretty much everything about us, our likes, our dislikes, the way we respond to things. I mean, when I say I've been tested on the job, off the job. I've been on TI support calls where, someone chimes in, like literally chimes in and say to me, you'll be tested tomorrow. And this incident, a whole incident took place tomorrow. So they're looking at how we handle things, logically, just thought processes and everything else. Like I said, socially, intellectually, spiritually, all of this stuff is being watched. We're being like very closely observed. I don't know how you receive this necessarily, but I'm just telling you what my experience has been, and from my observations, this is what I have observed. So even on my job, like I have literally, they have thrown different scenarios at me because, one of the traits that they say RH negatives have high intellect, we have higher than average IQs, et cetera, and just an entirely different immune system. So they're looking at us biologically, they're looking at us spiritually, emotionally, socially, et cetera. So they would throw random scenarios at me. I even, this was another pattern, how on various jobs I would be asked to some database or, some program that they have, and it's kind of in its, they haven't rolled it out yet. They will have me work on it. And, what works and what doesn't work, where can we make improvements, blah, blah, blah. That has happened on more than one federal job, And in that last position, like I said, they would throw various scenarios at me just to see how I would tackle it, to see what the outcome would be, what kind of results I would get, et cetera, et cetera. And so I've literally had higher ups come to me scratching their heads like, how are you doing this? Like, we haven't seen, we haven't seen anything like this, and, you're doing things that we haven't seen from any other CMS, da-da-da. And like I said, they literally were just looking at, like I said, how I would tackle it, what is her thought process, et cetera, et cetera. It's unreal to me. And so, again, looking back over my life, I'm like, wow, this has been going on for a very long time.
Right. Jacob says, Ronita, you are describing my dreams for the last 20 years, the only ones I remember. I never get to the bliss part before I wake up to a T describing my dreams. Wow.
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, that's what's amazing to me is this. This is the part that's really amazing. When I discovered the targeting, so when things were going haywire at the job, and I remember specifically having a phone conversation with a coworker who had become a friend, but not she pushed for the friendship, not me. So that's another thing that I've noticed is how people were kind of placed in my past that I did not seek out. I didn't seek a friendship with them. They sought me out out of nowhere, just seemingly random. At any rate, though, we're having a phone conversation, and as we're talking, I said, oh, my gosh. It was just like a light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, my gosh, this is exactly what is happening. I'm like, I have had these recurring dreams since childhood. I'm like, and that's what's going on right now. I'm like, I have to strategize, and it's unreal to me. But when I looked at even friends and family members and people like that being involved, or being in those dreams, I said, this is just real life. I'm like, I am literally being watched, being hunted, being tracked down, literally, in the physical realm, not just in these dreams. And I'm like, and all these same people who have been in the dreams, the family members, the friends, et cetera, they all have had some involvement in it. So while I did not know, and I'll bring you up to speed with that, there's a joint targeting publication. This is like a military publication or whatever, but there's a joint targeting publication where they essentially spell out in black and white, and it's unreal to me that, some of the documents that you can find where this stuff is written out in black and white, it's just unreal. But they have primary targets, which I would be considered a primary target. My mom would be considered a primary target. But they essentially use everyone in your circle to target you. And so earlier when I was mentioning family members, friends, clergy,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is happening to me at work and at school and at church, just every avenue of my life pretty much. And people had a choice. People have had a choice whether to participate in this or not. Well, at any rate, when they do decide to participate in it, they become targets of opportunity. So they are targeted as well on a lesser level. It's just sad. It's really sad. But, they would say or do different things, to affect me one way or another. I mean, it normally affect me adversely. And so it's just in complete contrast to these dreams. Like, it's exactly what was taking place in the dreams or whatever. And I'm just like, wow. And so I do believe, even just because this is what has happened in my dreams 1,000,001 times, I do believe that anybody who does stand by me now, I believe that we will escape this.
No,
I believe that
absolutely.
We will look forward to a better day.
Absolutely. And I agree with you.
I mean, it's essentially between choosing. It's like choosing between light and darkness, and people are so deceived. That also amazes me as well. So there's a guy online. He's former intelligence, and he breaks down kind of how these covert programs work from the top to the bottom down. So from them just hiring some random, a neighbor or whoever. He breaks all of this down, how folks are paid. They are compensated. They are given, bribes and favors. They are, and they're hired essentially. But not only that, they have to sign secrecy agreements. And so for me, I was trying to figure out, why is it that no one will admit the crap they're doing? I'm like, they will not come clean. Now, the best that I have gotten, and this is from just a very few people, they've apologized to me. So they have apologized, more or less said to me, if there's anything that I've said or done to offend you, I apologize. They didn't come out specifically, with exactly what took place, but they just kind of gave me a general apology, which I appreciate. I appreciate even getting that. But very few have just come clean and said, yeah, I'm participating in this, and you have been tracked, and you have been monitored,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been going on for decades. And, your family has been targeted generationally. No one has come out and said that specifically, but, I have, people have said other things. I have a first cousin who said to me that someone contacted her, and I told him something she was saying about, she told him everything she knows about me, and that they gave her a big fat check. I'm like, oh wow. Yeah, she said I wish I had kept a copy of it. I would have sent it to you. I said, well, I wish you had kept a copy of it too, because that would be evidence.
Right.
But it's sad. It's just really sad. It is. But there's no question that these covert programs exist. There are a number of various programs. Even with all the child molestation, child abductions, et cetera, there are behind the scenes programs
Mm-hmm.
causing this stuff, and it's unreal. It's unreal to me. But a lot of what we're saying, can definitely be proven. I mean, victims of this, a lot of what we're saying, it can definitely be proven. And we have been digging up the proof, right down to these patents, because I pointed that out. I'm like, okay, supposedly targeted individuals don't exist. Why is it that so many groups for targeted individuals exist? I'm like, why are people saying this stuff? Why are they talking about it if it
Right.
isn't in fact
Why are they
happening?
putting themselves out there? Why would they put themselves,
Right.
to
So when
be
I
made
found
fun
these
of?
patents,
I mean,
exactly, had their lives ruined, essentially their reputations and everything else. But when I found these patents, just numerous patents for these behind-the-scenes devices that are being used. And then, supposedly this stuff is meant for warfare, but it's being used on average, everyday citizens, just, without their knowledge. I'm ready to say for sport, but for whatever reason you choose to do it, whatever their reasons may be. And it's just so much technology out here, auditory, visual, mind manipulation. I mean, where you're actually, there's no reason that there should be any devices out here that can cause a person. So again, we have free will. We have free will to be, to choose thus or so. There should not be technology out here where you are essentially tampering with people's choices.
Right.
For me, because I now know that this technology exists, I think, I really think about what's taking, like you said earlier, when you were saying, why would someone go ahead and, do this or do that, they feel compelled to do it. But if there's technology out here that is planting thoughts or planting urges or whatever the case may be, like, how do you know if that's coming from you or if it's coming from some remote device that's being used on you? And with me knowing that it's one thing when you don't know the technology exists, because when you don't know it's something out there that could affect, your thinking, your decision making, or whatever the case may be, it's almost like, it's kind of like being on default or something. It's kind of like a remote control type thing. And I'm not describing this as best I could, because for me, like, I have strong convictions. Let me say that. I have very strong convictions. And so even if you are attempting to plant certain thoughts or whatever, I'm going to question it. If it doesn't line up with my core beliefs, my core values, etc., I'm going to automatically think, where is this coming from?
Absolutely. As you should, yes.
Right. And so, and challenge that, But now, like, I definitely stop and I pay attention to, because I know the technology exists, basically. I know the technology exists. And so if, some random thought, if I'm having some thought or whatever that, where in the world is this? I'll give you an example. I don't, for years, I didn't eat beef or pork at all.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it may have been 8 years or so, it may have been longer, but at any rate, I just started craving burgers all the time out of nowhere. And I was like,
McDonald's.
why am I craving burgers? No, I didn't want any McDonald's burger. That's like garbage. I wanted a big, juicy, these gourmet burgers. They have all kinds of burgers under the sun now. So I just started craving burgers. And I do know, though, that if your body is deficient in some area, I know that you can begin to have, a certain craving for something. So I was wondering, okay, is it that? But like I said, now I know this technology exists, so I know that this may not necessarily be me. It may not necessarily just be my natural thought or, my body needing a certain, vitamin or, mineral or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I now know that, yeah, they do. I mean, technology does exist. That let me see, what's the patent number, if I know it off the top of my head. There's a patent number for remote neural monitoring. That one is 601/1991. But there's another patent number, and I can't think of it right offhand. But basically, it's a patent where they are able to, access and monitor. This is remotely. They're able to access and monitor your thinking. It's alter. What is it? I need to look it up real quick.
Well, that's that would be that would play into the world system of the beast. That would keep track of everything you do. And of course, if it was everything that you think, it wouldn't surprise me.
Monitor and alter. That's what it is, to monitor and alter brainwave activity. That's what it is. So I said, I'm like, why does anything exist where they're able to access, basically able to monitor? Monitoring is one thing. Being able to kind of see what's going on. I was like, I could see ways that could be useful. You have folks who have Alzheimer's and stuff like that. You might want to study that kind of stuff, or other, brain disorders. But why would you be altering anyone's, thinking like remotely? I mean, I don't know. I just don't. I just, when anything can be used for good or evil, then that's when I have a problem with that. Because no one even knows that you have access.
Exactly right, Elaine. Remote thinking mind technologies. Yep. That would be it.
The way that this has been described now on these calls, and, they had some really smart folks on these calls, but anyway, the way it has been described is that we each have, so when you were just speaking about DNA and this coding and everything, that we each have an individual, a unique brain code, and they're actually able to, the same way that they would be able to hack into a phone or a computer, etc., they're able to hack into our brains and plant thoughts, etc., etc. So I've heard that they're capable of a lot. Some of it I don't really know because I haven't experienced it personally. But yeah.
So
it exists.
So what kind of what kind of harassment have you, and you said that your daughter had experienced?
Well, I just said that with the targeting, I said that it's been generational. So not just me and my daughter, but it's like I said, beginning with my grandfather in World War II, as far as I know. And I don't know if it goes back further than that or not. But in terms of, and I'll just talk about me. I mean, and I have witnessed other things within my family, but I'll just speak specifically about me. And so, have you heard? Are you familiar with the phrase gaslighting at all?
Yes, and all of us here are. So, yes.
So I've experienced gaslighting both on and off the job. I've experienced it by everyone in my circle, like I was mentioning earlier. At work, I've had my work product tampered with. The same way the records have been changed and stuff like that, my medical records and, other records involving me. Like I said, I had such a hard time even getting my personnel records. My personnel records have been, they've tampered with that, changed things, etc. Um, when I left my job, this is one example. I left my job in late August. Was, like my last day. And they did not report it to the health insurance company. Like, basically, when I left my agency, personnel should have let anyone they needed to let know, but they also should have let Kaiser Permanente know that I was no longer with the agency, that my insurance should be cut off, et cetera, et cetera. They did not do that, and so my insurance carried over all the way into the following year. I just so happened to call one day because by this point, at the beginning of the year, I had gotten insurance myself through Obamacare, and I was paying my premiums and everything, and so I had a hard time getting anyone on the phone. I was trying to place you know how you can call the nurse, the advice nurse, basically. I was just trying to get through to my advice nurse to ask a couple questions or whatever and see if I needed to come in. Well, anyway, I had a hard time getting the advice nurse with this new health insurance, and so I said, you know what, let me just call Kaiser. And I'm like, I'm sure I can just ask the advice nurse a couple of questions, even though I'm no longer, technically a member there. And so when I called, she asked me for my medical record number, and I let her know, well, I just want to let you know I'm not actually, a member there anymore. I have new insurance now. Da, da, da. I went through that whole spiel, but she told me to just go ahead and give her my medical record number anyway. I did, and she said, oh, you're still active. And I said, really? I said, I shouldn't be because we're far into February now, and it should have been canceled. And so the minute, she tells me that, I get right on the phone, with the folks in my agency. I get on the phone with HR, and I'm saying, why in the world haven't you all reported that I'm no longer with the agency? And they jump right to it, But this is several months later, almost 6 months later.
Right.
And so I was highly upset. I said, okay, no wonder I've been getting these random letters in the mail about am I still insured with my previous, with my employer and da-da-da. I'm like, well, I'm no longer employed for one. But I'm like, why do they keep sending it to you? And that was why. Well, I now know the reason they didn't cancel my insurance was because they had the doctor going in making changes to my records. And I'm just like, really? So changes were being made with the agency, changes were being made with the doctor. I'm just like, wow, this is unreal.
One thing here...
but that's just one example.
One thing here that Elaine says, 2017 they developed tech, and the actual device will be ready in 5 years. Independent.co.uk News Science, she gave the link. Jacob says, Elaine, right? That makes sense because after I got that titanium plate in my head, things seemed to change in the way I think. That's when I really started waking up. Well, maybe
have you
that
heard that we're connected to these supercomputers?
It wouldn't surprise me.
You said no?
I've not heard that directly, but I just, keep that thought because that's a very important thought. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in 3 minutes, so keep those thoughts, and we'll be right back.
Please, I think I drank too much. I said, what can I do? You said, get me a taxi. I did escort you to a local bus, but it couldn't stop you from getting off. I really tried. You never thought about your destination. What can one do except follow you? The one that taught me about procrastination. You really taught me to be patient. I really tried. And ever since I lost you late that night, I've been trying to find you in strangers' eyes. I didn't seem to find you anywhere, and I know within me at least you were happy. Someone called, we talked. I wasn't really shocked. Someone died, that's all. And the rain keeps falling on me. The three of us all, never growing old. Yeah, lost control. Under the surface, I'm getting colder. Under the surface, I'm getting older. I really tried.
And we're back. One thing about you, see Elaine, Jacob says, I wonder if that plate screws up their signal or something. Possibly. Elaine says, so my entire system just crashed seconds after I copied that link to the room. Ronita, I guess you weren't supposed to hear that or get that link. But Jacob, it very well could be. One thing about the theory of us being connected to supercomputers, I believe that we are already connected to quantum computers. I mean, let's face it. They come out and tell us, years after the fact that they've had, certain things going on for years, and so you're not going to tell me that they don't already have quantum computers that that are reaching into different dimensions. And if they can reach into different dimensions, then they can certainly connect to our DNA, which our DNA is frequency. Frequency. It's what Tesla said. He said, think of it more in terms of frequency and vibration rather than anything else. And so that's interesting. But
yeah, we are another person on one of the calls, and this person, because I want to say she was RH negative, but I may be mistaking her with someone else. It's two people that they were giving a lot of information on this. And so one lady was saying how, yes, we are already connected to quantum computers, et cetera, et cetera. She was saying that there's an entire grid.
I believe so.
Exactly the way it is on the Matrix. And that essentially we are all avatars, which is amazing to
Could
me.
be.
And so, I mean, I'm just listening. I'm listening and I'm taking it into account,
Right.
And so the thing is that now for a person for a spiritual person, you believe in God, that then causes you to question, okay, well, what does that mean,
Right.
as far as my spirituality, and my beliefs. And all I can think of is this, is that an entire universe exists, much bigger than what we have experienced and everything just here on Earth. And I just feel like he's in control of it all, period, whatever the case may be. So, when there's talk of aliens, when there's talk of, all this scientific and futuristic stuff and other dimensions, et cetera, I still just believe that he is the God of it all. Yeah, I definitely know that. Like, I feel that I have a lot more questions than I have answers, and I'm steadily, learning and growing, like, as I go along. The Avatar piece, when she was speaking about that, that we are all avatars, and she had said something about being replaced. That just makes me think about why are court records missing? Why are educational records missing? Why are medical records? I mean, to me, it is not by chance or happenstance or coincidence that everything concerning me is disappearing.
Well,
You're messing
one
with
thing
my records.
is back in the trial of Clay Shaw, one of the suspects of the conspiracy, JFK conspiracy. Jim Garrison, one of my heroes, that took it as far as he could, as far as the conspiracy to assassinate JFK. They brought in this man's daughter, and this man was on the stand. And they brought his daughter in, and he said, "How do I know that that's my daughter?" And they're like, "What?" And he said, "How do I know that that's my daughter?" And this was back in the '60s, believe it or not. And they said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, It could be a clone, it could be, could be a fabrication." And they're like, "Oh my God!" And Jim Garrison was, he was going bonkers because he's like, "Oh my God, this guy's a fruitcake." Well, turns out, he's not so much of a fruitcake now, is he? I mean,
right.
Jacob says, "I recently, let's see. Elaine says they are building all of the artificial intelligence." Yes, they are. That's where...
I mean, transhumanism and everything.
That transhumanism, because in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, chapter 2, it says, and they mixed iron with the clay, and the clay did not adhere. The clay did not cleave to the iron. It's talking about transhumanism. And Jacob says, "I recently applied for disability and listed all the hospitals where I received treatment and the year treatment was needed and the location of each one, and they can't seem to find my records from any of them."
Right.
Well, you and Renita have a lot in common.
I have that other patent number, too. It's U.S. patent number 395-1134, and that's for an apparatus and method for remotely monitoring and altering brain waves.
Right. And I believe that, people that are deemed psychotic or having psychosis, those that, people say, "Oh, they're crazy," and everything. Who's to say that they're not recipients of this torture? This, I mean, after all, it's invisible.
A lot of them are, and a lot of them have been complaining about it. And so when I go back to the 2030 agenda, the UN's 2030 agenda, and the fact that you all are working on depopulation, well, they're doing that in a number of ways. So they're doing that with these man-made disasters. They're doing it through vaccinations, which they're actually vaccinating youth. This HPV vaccine is an example. But they're vaccinating youth, sterilizing them, of course, without their knowledge or anything. But they're doing it through vaccinations. They're doing it through the chemtrails and everything, with everything that they're dumping into our environment. So that's affecting the air, food, and water. But additionally, they are using this. So a lot of these mass shootings are deliberate. They're using this equipment on people. They're causing these mass shootings, and basically to terrify America and have America practically beg to to have their guns taken away, and then we're defensive.
Yeah,
and
good
so
luck
it's
on
like
that.
off to the concentration camps at that point.
Yeah, yeah. You got the rednecks who are saying, "I don't think so, Bubba." You know, forget that. Yeah, you won't find me out trying to confiscate guns. It's like it's like the senator or some congressman. Looks like he just started shaving yesterday. I'm gonna confiscate guns. I'm like, really, bub? Really? Are you serious? Looks like you could open your door and slap him and he would just crumble. Oh man! And you're gonna take everybody's guns. Ooh.
Well, it's meant to incite fear, but of course people have guns buried and everything else. I mean, I don't think they'll ever be able to take all the guns away, but that's the goal. That's their goal.
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I have hope because, again, all I think about is you all have this 2030 agenda where you plan to have all this in place. You plan to have your utopia in place by then. That's just a little over 10 years.
Their
so,
utopia.
like I said, a lot has to take place between now and then. And the hope that I have is that, God already has a plan in place, period.
Right.
So whatever it is they're attempting to do.
Well, one thing that I ask people is, has it ever occurred to you that nothing ever occurs to God?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
See, Elaine, you say, have you heard anything about individuals with a V on their forehead just under the skin? When the person becomes upset, it turns purple underneath. I have not, but I have a V on my forehead, but it doesn't turn purple. Thank God it doesn't turn purple. Yeah, I've got a V on my forehead. I have a stork bite, is what they call it, on my neck where the skin doesn't grow. It's legend says that a stork brought me by my neck, and that's why the hair doesn't grow there. Red V, maybe. I can send you a pic of I think of my V. By the way, V is one of my favorite movies, and it was made by the makers of The Matrix. There's another Matrix plug. Just call me Neo, why don't you? Anyway, Jacob, you say, Elaine, it's funny how every time I start to read or watch something that resonates with me, I get kicked off the internet or my computer or phone freezes. Yeah, about that. When your computer goes black from the top down and your cell phone rings, yeah. My advice on that would be just let it ring. Yeah, that is not a good feeling to answer it and hear somebody say, "We know what you're up to." It's like, okay, this is either a joke or something's not right. And so I try to play dumb. I'm like, yeah, right. Oh, you think this is funny? Well, yeah, it's a joke. No, this is no joke. I'm thinking, oh man, I watched The Matrix one too many times, and now I'm in it. And I'm like, oh my God.
Follow the white rabbit.
Morpheus is about to call. Morpheus is about to call, and my worst fear is about to come true. Not the agents, not any of that stuff, but heights. I am not going to go out on a building ledge for anything. I would rather face the agents than to face falling off a building. No. Me and heights do not get along. So.
Yeah, me too.
Ooh.
I wanted to mention something too. When I told you that I believe that I have encountered some of these people just indirectly, like not that I haven't been confronted directly, but just indirectly. And so there's a couple different examples. Well, one definitely at a doctor's office. I want to say this was at GW Hospital, I believe. Some people, 2 doctors came in. They were supposed to be doctors anyway. And I had been chipped at this point because when all of this targeting was taking place, They put an RFID chip in my arm in the middle of the night in my apartment. And this is awful. Like I make none of this up. This is after I'd already left my agency, and like I said, I was trying to escape this stuff, but the stuff only got worse. And so when you say what forms of harassment, I mean, that list goes on and on. I mean, I've been followed on foot. I've been followed, by vehicles. I've been followed by helicopters, et cetera, et cetera. It's nothing I'm making up. I have pictures of this stuff. Like, that I say this all the time. I'm like, you can't, if I was only making it up and if it was only in my head, I wouldn't be able to provide evidence. I wouldn't be able to present pictures, et cetera, et cetera, if it was just in my head. And so, yeah, I've been followed. I even experienced the drone once during a road trip. That scared me to death because, I mean, that was my first time really seeing a drone, like, up close and personal like that. I'm like, wow. But I was saying, you know what, I'm going to get a passport. I'm going to just get my daughter and our passports and we just going to leave the country. That's the way I was feeling. I'm like, if I can't escape this crap, and at this point, I didn't realize it was worldwide. I now know that it's worldwide that, people are being targeted and everything. Well, as soon as I mentioned that, as soon as I even mentioned getting us passports and leaving the country, I mean, I woke up the next morning with, like, a huge bruise on my arm. I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, what is this? And I'm feeling it, and it's sore. And it's bruised, and so I feel it, and I can literally feel, like, this chip up under my skin. I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is unreal. And so I went to a couple different hospitals. No one would go anywhere near it. They would not scan it. They were making up excuses. Oh, we don't have the equipment to do anything like that, da-da-da-da-da. They would not scan it. I later had, basically once I brought a lot of attention to it, because of course I took pictures of it and I had it all over the net and everything, and once I brought attention to it, they had one nurse that I saw try and dislodge it, and also a family friend. Let me see it, let me feel it or whatever, and she tried to dislodge it as well. So I don't feel it there in that same spot, but I still feel the indentation there where it was. There's still an indentation. So it could still be floating around somewhere in my body. I don't know. But another thing that I heard is they can't chip us. So I heard they can't clone us and they can't chip us. I don't know.
Well, I've read and I've researched that they can't clone us, but I don't know about the chipping, so I have to read more into that. But with the
I've been through a lot. Like, it's unreal. It's unreal, everything I've been through.
Well,
I mean, like I said, me and my family. My grandfather developed leukemia from whatever they did to him, and he died in his early 60s.
Well, look up the Tuskegee experiments that they did, and the radiation that was spread across America back in the 40s that President Clinton apologized for. Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, thanks a lot. It does a lot. Does a lot of good now. So.
All that stuff is posted on my Twitter page.
Yeah, that's just that's insane. I mean, come along, after the fact and say how sorry you are and all that, and it's not the same. It doesn't matter,
Right.
But
and folks are never because I also have NPR. .org, they have a lot of info on some of that experimentation, especially that they were doing the soldiers and everything. So you can find a lot of info there. You can even listen to interviews and things like that. But what kills me about it is, well, one, like, that kind of news, it never goes mainstream. So you never hear mainstream, what happened to these people, how their families were affected, how it was rectified or anything, because it never does get rectified. A lot of these families are denied benefits and things like that. Because this is one of the things that NPR was looking at, that, okay, now the government has now been found guilty of, doing this to people. And they had agreed to, there was this court case where basically a bunch of vets sued, and they won. And basically what the government was supposed to do was, one, let them know what they had been exposed to, the possible effects of it. Two, get them proper medical treatment. But whatever it was, everything that they were supposed to do, they did not follow through, of course. And so I'm just like, this stuff never really gets dealt with. It never gets brought mainstream. We don't hear about it. I posted on my Twitter page one time, like, where are they now? Like, I would love to hear from these people. I would love to hear from victims. I would love to hear from their families. I would love to know, like, what the government did, what efforts they made to correct this. Because, again, this stuff takes place, and you don't find out about it until decades later.
Mm-hmm.
And when I now know that I'm a victim, that this has been taking place in my family's generation, and I'm like, okay, where is any justice for us?
Right. Well, that's just that's just why it's called criminal justice. They're the only ones that get it.
Mhm. And so I go back to God, a divine purpose and a divine plan, and all of this must play out, and I must endure till the end, and my justice will come from Him.
Right. Well, it's like it's, we can we can sit and say well, they have all the power, and everything, and it's like a baseball game. It's like God, the source, the creator, is saying, wait a minute, wait. You haven't even been up to bat yet, and yeah, it's like, don't, it's not over till it's over, and so don't count yourself out until you get up to bat. You never know. You might be a Mark McGwire, a Babe Ruth, and just knock a home run. So. Yeah.
Amen.
And
Amen.
It's like, are you going to be scared? Well, hell yes, you're going to be scared. Are you going to do it anyway? That's up to you. Face your fear and watch it disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they count on, is your fear. They count on your fear getting the best of you, and don't allow that to happen.
Yeah, I don't have fear so much anymore, and because it's just like I've been through so much now at this point that I don't really have much fear. So I've told people that I finally understand that scripture that God's perfect love has driven out all fear. When I know that God has my best interest at heart and everything, and I know that He's with me, I know that He, protects me and provides for me and everything else, despite everything that I've been through. I'm very secure in that. Like, I really am. The most that they do is they discourage me at times.
Mm-hmm.
So I do get discouraged at times, and I do. I'll even get distracted sometimes. Because sometimes you just get downright angry, like you're tired. You're tired of going through this mess,
right,
the nonsense, and you get tired and you get frustrated. And so those are the things that I go through more so than I don't really have to fear anymore, because I just know that the outcome is in His hands. I understand that He's in control. No matter how, bad Satan wants to kick and scream and, pull every one of his stunts, out of his hat, every one of his tricks out of his hat or whatever. I know that God is in control. So
Well-
you essentially are being a spoiled brat. You know, you're kicking and screaming. You know your final outcome. You know your final destination. So as far as that, I don't have to worry. It's just a little frustrating because I just feel like there are better things that I would rather be doing with my time and my energy and my resources than constantly fighting this nonsense, you know.
Well, it's
I just feel like there's so much more I could be doing.
well, it's like you had you know, Moses. Moses was, you know, brought up and or was raised up to lead a people that were in bondage out of bondage. And when the you know, Bible says that when God called Moses, that, you know, Moses is like, is there somebody behind me? Because you know, you know me? I mean, do you know who you're talking to? God's like, yes, I know you. You know. And he says, well, my brother Aaron is you know, he says, I'm a man of stumbling lips, you know, basically I stutter, I have a speech impediment, I'm not your man. My brother Aaron is a very eloquent speaker. And God says, well, you can take him with you, but you're my man. And Moses is like, well, you know, and he's trying to come up with all these excuses. Why? And God's like, yeah, well, you're still my man. Why was that? Why was Moses, I mean, he had a horrible temper. It was like one day God is wanting to kill everybody, wanting to just wipe them out. The next day, Moses wants to kill them all, and God calms Moses down. I'm serious. God calms Moses down one day. The next day, Moses is pleading with God, don't kill him, don't kill him. Next day, Moses is like, oh, I'm going to kill every one of them, you know. And so there's a play there. And that's why that God said that there would never be another prophet like Moses who was his friend whom he talked to face. And for everybody out there that, you know, thinks, well, I'm just not the right material, the ability that the Creator, the Source, love itself looks for the most is availability, willingness.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, you can have people for you, you can have people against you, but like I said, it's who knows you. It's not necessarily how much you know them. It's like, you know, Jesus told the you know, disciples. He said, you know, remember, I chose you. You didn't choose me. Now, you know, they did later at some point, but in the beginning, he chose them. And he says, he said, I chose all of you. He says, and one of you is a devil. Why is that? Because it's like he said, not one jot, not one tittle will be changed until all has been fulfilled. And you know, people say, well, poor Judas.
It's funny.
Excuse me, go ahead.
You give that example, and I talked about that recently or whatever, but I'm like, you know, Jesus referred to Judas as friend, you know?
Exactly.
He's like, friend, do what you must, because his whole, I mean, basically everything that he was doing with purpose in mind, you know? And even from this time, I mean, even when he was younger, and, you know, he has wandered off to the temple, and then they come and look for him and everything. Well, where did you expect me to be? You know, I mean, just all that.
Yeah.
So
Jesus kind of gets an attitude. Yeah. I said Jesus at 12 kind of gets an attitude, and they're like, oh, man, this one's bad. Yeah, he was a revolutionary. He was a rebel. And he said it as it was. And but one thing that I want to ask is when the says when the Pharisees came up and Jesus was, teaching a certain teaching to the people, they came up and they said, "Who gave you the authority to teach this teaching?" Now I want to know what exactly are your thoughts on this teaching, because it was something that was not meant for public consumption. And they said, he says, "I teach what my Father in heaven, tells me to teach." And they said, "How do you know these things? You're not even 50 years old." And he says, they said, "And you say that you teach things that God tells you to teach?" And he says, "Yeah, that's right." And they're looking at each other saying, "Who does this long-haired Galilean think he is?" And he says, they said, "So you're saying you're greater than our father Abraham?" And he says, "If Abraham was your father, you would rejoice in this day." He says, but you don't, because Abraham's not your father. Your father's the devil." And they're like, "Whoa, did he just say what I think he said?" And yeah, he did, and people were put to death on the spot for that, and Jesus is there drawing a line in the sand saying, "No more," "Yeah, I am teaching them this teaching, this powerful teaching that you don't want them to hear, because you want to keep the best seats, you want to keep your status, you want to keep your power over them, and I'm teaching them the truth. What are you going to do about it?" And they said, "Are you saying that you're greater than our father Abraham?" And he says, "What I'm saying is, before Abraham was, I am." Now, whoa. Those were words that cut them to the core, because God gave his name to Moses when Moses said, "Who shall I tell Pharaoh sent me?" And God says, "Tell him I am that I am sent you. I am." And Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am." What was he saying? He's saying, I am before Abraham. I'm there before Abraham. I'm with Abraham, and I'm here with you now. I transcend time and space. So, what's up? You know who I am. And then he goes on to say, you know who I am. You know that I am God in the flesh, and because you hold to the traditions of men, you want to hold on to this earthly power. Right. That's why you're going to die in your sins, and you're going to be lost. And they're like, lost? We're lost? You think we're lost? And he says, yep, Skippy, you're lost. And that's when they said that they started making plans to put him to death, because they couldn't have anybody running around telling the truth. And so one thing, though, about that, too, is it was this is what scares me more than anything. It doesn't really scare me. It's unsettling, is that there will come a time that politics and religion are going to blend. And that's when things are going to get ugly.
When religion what?
When politics and religion blend, when they come together.
Oh, I'm going to blend. Okay.
And it is going to happen.
Yeah, they're working on one world religion, one world currency,
one world government.
Et cetera.
Read, look back at there have been. It's been said there's been two kings of the world. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar and Alexander the Great. That Nebuchadnezzar was, he was the, you say the king of the world, Rex Mundi, whatever you want to call it. Nebuchadnezzar was king of the world. I mean, ruled over it. Alexander the Great, the same ruled over the world as we know it, or as it was known. But before that, there was a ruler of the world, Nimrod, that's talked about in the Bible. And Nimrod was the one that started the Tower of Babel. That really wasn't a tower. It was a portal. It was a wormhole into the dimension that the Creator's in, and he was set on building that and accessing God directly. One thing too is people talk about that the blood types and the different genetics of people, how that they seemingly arrived on Earth just overnight, just boom, here they were, just origin unknown. So where did they come from? Well, the Bible in the original Hebrew says, the Bible says, in the beginning. Well, in the original Hebrew it says, in a beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was void. In the original Hebrew it says, and the earth became void. So to become void means it had to be filled, or there had to be something in it beforehand. And if you read the book of Job, if you read the book of Jeremiah, the book of Ezekiel, it talks about another time before Adam and Eve, when the keeper, when the one that was over mankind enslaved mankind and would not, or enslaved the prisoners and would not let them go, and the land became desolate, and let's take it from there. It's this is going to shock a lot of people, but I believe that this is the sixth cycle of time, whatever you want to call it. Adam and Eve, that in the beginning, in a beginning, it's a sixth beginning, and that's what the days of the week are based on, and the seventh is the Sabbath, the rest. So I believe after this time cycle, timeline, whatever you want to call it, I think that when this is over, when it's finished, it will be the sixth and final one, and then there will be rest.
That sounds so beautiful. So
yes, it does.
Yes, I'm tired. I say that all the time, whatever, but people just can't even imagine. I am so tired, and it's like mind, body, and spirit, basically.
Exactly. Some of us were born tired.
Because this has been lifelong. It's been lifelong for me. And when I say that this is a trauma-based program, I find myself, because like I said, just more and more is unfolding. So I find myself, like, just maybe a couple weeks ago or whatever, I'm posting a picture of the school, which is also torn down. But this elementary school that I went to, where I was invited to be skipped a grade. Like, basically, they recommended that I be skipped a grade, and my mother didn't allow it. And so I just even look at how my mother has, like, played a major role in this. I never would have known that was the reason, for her treating me so bad, and just, all the physical and verbal abuse over the years, My mother has looked at me and, if I knew then what I know now, I would have gotten an abortion. That's one of the things she said, but she just said numerous things all the time, She would put me and my sister out. We're in elementary school when it started. just all kinds of things. She would look at me, tell me I look too much like my dad. You know, I need to leave. I need to move. You know, blah blah blah. It just went on and on and on. And I mean, like it's just years and years. It's been decades now of verbal abuse.
That's,
you know, emotional abuse.
Now, you know, that
physical abuse.
that kind of, you know, cruelty. Would you say that it was human cruelty, or would you say that it was beyond human? Because I've talked to some people, and it was way beyond, you know, human cruelty. I mean, humans could not devise cruelty as like some of the, you know, cruelty that I've heard, you know, people talk about.
My mother both. They black my eyes. You know, my father had kicked me in my stomach. You know, dragged me across the living room by my hair.
I'm so sorry.
Even begin to imagine abuse my father's friend. Like, part that really hurts the most is, you know, the people that you love and you should be able to trust and you should be able to turn to, you know, these should be the people nurturing you, you know, et cetera. I had like the exact opposite. And so, yeah, like I said, it's just a lot. And compounding over the years. I mean, I just feel like I should be, if it were, because I'm just saying I should be a totally different person than who I am. If what I have been through, you know, was the deciding factor, then yeah, I really would be pretty messed up. And I was determined. You know, my mother was an alcoholic. Later on in life, you know, she began to mess with drugs. My father was both an alcoholic and a drug addict. And so I was determined not to do that, not to go that route at all, me and my sister both. And so we've never really had those issues or whatever. But I'm just like, if my life and what I have been through, like, had dictated things, I would have a house for the kids and, you know, be an alcoholic, be a drug addict, you know, be God knows what. If it was, you know, if my life were dictating things. And I'm just so thankful that, I mean, I've always just had a strong desire to, the whole feeling compelled piece. I've always had a desire for God and a desire, you know, to go to heaven and everything like that. And so that's what has kept me from going a different route, basically.
Right.
So no matter how hard things have been, no matter the cards that I've been dealt, you know, et cetera, I've like tried to do the right thing and tried to, you know, stay on the right track.
Right. I've had people that, you know, say, well, I do good because I don't want to go to hell. And I'm like, well, shouldn't you do good because you want to do good? I mean,
right.
You know, if you just do good because you don't want to, you're afraid of going to hell, it doesn't say much for you. I'm sorry, but, you know, it's like if you're basically saying, well, if I could get away with it, I would do everything under the sun. But unfortunately, God can see. But unfortunately, God can see everything I do. So, damn, I can't get away with it. So I'm just going to be good, but I really want to be bad, which is the definition of sin. You know, it's like you do good because you want to do good. You don't want to, you know. Right. You know, it's like, ooh, so this is Santa Claus. Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I definitely desire to dwell with God for eternity. I do. I mean, above anything. And so, yeah, that's definitely what has kept me out of a lot of trouble. Like I said, I've been through hell here. The last thing I want to do is spend hell in eternity. That's for sure.
Right.
I'm like, I want to dwell with him.
Well, back, back to the computer, the simulation hypothesis. It's what if hell is nothing more than a compartment, say like with firewalls, and it's like you can't escape from hell, and in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, it's Jesus says that Abraham says, between you and us there's a great gulf that's been fixed, so that we can't travel from here to you, and you can't travel from there to us. And when you get right down to it, it sounds like a computer program or whatever. Jacob, you say, I would rather be on top of the tallest building on earth than be underneath the ground, like in a cave or tunnel or even a small room. Heights don't bother me. I was a commercial roofer for 15 years. I roofed the World Trade Center in Denver, Colorado. It's 84 stories tall. Well, you know what, bub? Send me a postcard from there, but I am not stepping foot. It's like my grandfather always said. He said he would fly on a plane as long as he could keep one foot on the ground, which I fly planes, but I am not. No way. The people underneath would get very messy. Whoa. That is just not my cup of tea. But anyway, we are just about, we're nearing the 3-hour mark. So any closing questions, comments, or that you have, or personal experiences that you want to share, please do so now. Renita, thank you very much for joining us. This certainly won't be the last time, I hope. And the more that we can get the word out that this is a very real thing that's that's taking place, and it's affecting a lot of people. I think it's going to touch many more people, and maybe help them as far as their what they're going through. And
I think well, thank you, first of all. Thank you for having me and
absolutely
hearing me out. I think that even being able to just express some of the stuff sometimes is just for healing. And just trying to maintain and trying to move forward. For me, my past
you're really breaking up.
Oh, am I?
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
There you are.
Well, what I was going to say, that's better. Okay. What I was going to say is that my pastor at my old church was going through this entire series called Be Ready. And it more or less was like emergency preparedness. But some of this stuff he was aware of. Just I don't know if he was really aware about the depopulation thing. I think maybe so. But they were going through this entire series, and essentially he was going through the physical aspects of it, ways that we could be ready in the physical realm. But his wife was very much dealing with being ready spiritually. And for me, I just feel like that should be people's main focus. Because, at the end of the day, Yeah, you. I mean, I don't think any of us necessarily want to spend eternity in hell, but I just think that in that, and even in able to, even in order to be able to endure, you know, this stuff, because I just feel like it's a lot coming down the pipes, and it's going to take wisdom and insight and courage and, you know, et cetera, to be able to maintain.
Right.
And I just think that, you know, we definitely need to have the right focus, and we need to have a certain, like, we need to just be resolute, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that we know that our lives and our income, our outcome and our destiny and our fate, you know, is all in God's hands. And, I mean, at the end of the day, we know the victory is won. Like, we know that we win in the end.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. Absolutely.
And that this all has to play out. And so I just think that people really need to be focused on that.
You have to keep that mindset.
Keep eternity in mind and know that the victory is won.
Absolutely.
You know?
Well, on that note, we will call it a night, and just to let you know, when I end the broadcast here, it automatically hangs up on you, so I don't want you to think that I'm hanging up on you.
Oh, sure, sure, no problem.
But just take care and keep in touch, and God bless you. Love and light to you all.
Thank you.
Love you all. You can reach me, the Texarsis podcast at gmail.com. Good night from Texas. We will see you next time.
Good night, everyone.